Okay, well, it's happened. EA's been purchased and is going private. This was a video I wanted to make last week when the story broke on, I believe it was Friday. It was after I did my podcast, of course. So we'll be talking about that this coming week. But I wanted to do a whole video about it. So long story short, EA, which has been for a long time now a publicly traded company, where anyone could buy stocks in it and be an investor, is selling to a group of investors that will turn it private. It will no longer be a publicly traded company. In theory, that means they don't even have to announce like how much money they make anymore and things like that, which will be interesting. It'll be different. It's going to be a big change for what I assume remains to be the biggest independent publisher, not associated directly with a platform. Okay, let's talk about a few things. So first, I'll just throw it out here that I have a tendency, if you watch my videos, to play devil's advocate, to go against the general feeling. Sometimes I never try to be contrarian. That's never the purpose, or at least I try not for it to be, but to tell the rational side, or at least present a rational take on things that are happening, especially in the games industry, right? So with this, the take you're seeing everywhere right now, if you pay attention to gaming media and podcasters and influencers, content creators, journalists, all that, is oh no, Bonesaw and Jared Kushner just bought EA. EA games will no longer have LGBT characters. And like in Mass Effect, they're going to say Cerberus was actually right. I understand that take. I understand not liking, the Saudi Arabian investing fund being part of a publisher that has games and studios that we like. I appreciate that, one of these investment companies having Jared Kushner, a political figure, as part of it is something people don't like. I don't disagree. I hate it too. But I think there's more to it. And I think there's a lot of like chicken littling happening right now where everyone's saying the sky is falling, because it always is. I think that there's some things to talk about with EA that, things weren't really going great in the first place. I don't know if this actually makes them worse. I doubt it makes them better either, but we'll get into it. So let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about the why. So the main thing I'll focus on, because it's the only thing I know a little bit about, is this private investment fund from Saudi Arabia. That's one of the big sticking points here. People are concerned, one, just the association with some of the things that happen with that government and the money that they use. It's a whole different video, and a video that will get this video basically hidden. If I mention it here, let's just say there's some drama, right? The thing to consider, and the impression I'm under with this fund, which I've known about for a long time, is that they are investing everywhere and into anything. And the reason is, at least from what I've gathered, is that Saudi Arabia knows that their oil revenue isn't going to be a thing forever. It's going to be around longer than people think. We aren't going to fully electrify or do hydrogen or whatever in the next 5 years. So oil is still going to be necessary for a really, really long time, but maybe not at its current demand, and probably not forever, right? So they've had the forethought to say, hey, we need to use all of this banked money, a essentially infinite amount of money that is sitting there in their bank accounts, in their offshore accounts, whatever. And we need to use this to make us viable in the future as a country, as a nation, because Saudi Arabia doesn't have much industry, or at least historically hasn't had much industry besides oil, in the modern times, right? So it's smart. Like it makes sense. It's a smart thing to do. There's lots of other things around it that are more complicated, maybe another video, or you can go to better sources for that. So what they're doing here is they're investing into a big game company, into, I believe, the largest third-party publisher at this point with EA. Now, the main reason they're investing is for FIFA, or it's now called FC, is for Madden, is for, like a Battlefield 6 that's probably about to make a bunch of money for EA, for even a Respawn that puts out games and has ongoing games that make money, right? And the whole conversation here is around, are these investment partners, these new private owners of the company, going to influence the way games are made, the games that get made, the studios that remain to exist, that continue to be a thing? Are they going to have a hand in that? And the answer is maybe, probably, but we don't know. So, doing some digging around and stuff like that. The only comparable example I could find, that this is specifically with the private investment fund for Saudi Arabia. They fully own Niantic, who makes Pokemon Go. And the reason I think that's a good example is one, I believe EA made around $7 billion last year. Niantic was around $1 billion. So, it's a pretty big difference, but you're still talking about $1 billion companies. One of the big things people are concerned about is that some of the cultural beliefs and such of the people who would be involved in this fund, and whether or not the companies they own will be able to do things that maybe don't align with their cultural beliefs and religious beliefs and stuff like that. Well, Niantic is a decent example, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Like, you're not allowed to gamble in Saudi Arabia. It's a big no-no, as well as many other things. Which is, again, part of that other discussion that maybe happens one day. Pokemon Go is a gambling machine. That just is what it is. Like it or not, I know there's more to it than that, but that's what it is. It's a live service game. It's on mobile. So obviously that's what it is. As far as I can tell, they haven't interfered with that. Now, gambling makes them money, so that's not social and cultural issues, right? I looked. One thing that I don't think people realize is that, specifically to the private investment fund, they are invested in like basically everything. They have money literally everywhere. They own 8% of Nintendo. Now, that's not a huge amount, but it's enough to be influential. It's not nothing. Nintendo is a very valuable company, and to own 8% of it is a big deal. I imagine they're the biggest, if not one of the biggest, shareholders for Nintendo. And as far as I can tell, I've never seen, I couldn't find any evidence that they've interfered with them. The only thing I could find was the SNK, I think, fighting series. They, I believe, fully or mostly own the company who makes that. And there were some rumors that maybe they influenced something there. The more I looked into it, I couldn't find anything. So, believe me if you don't, believe me or don't, I don't know. So that's helpful, I guess. The thing to consider, like for me, if you're a BioWare fan, if you're worried about, like the next Mass Effect, and so on and so forth, there's things to consider here. On the optimistic side, they very well may just kind of let EA have its side projects, which is what, unfortunately, Mass Effect would be at this point. All of these investors are getting into EA for those big hitters, for the FIFA, now FC, Madden, all those other things I listed before. Maybe, and this is where it gets kind of scary, maybe they allow them to also have these other projects that aren't giant money makers, but they're good for their community, they're good for their bottom line, customer acquisition, whatever. On the other hand, the concerning part is that as part of this deal, and I'm going to be straight up, I'm not a financial person. I don't fully understand how these loans and acquisitions and all that work. From what I can gather, essentially 36 billion is being invested into EA for these groups to take ownership. And then something like an 18 to 20 billion dollar loan is being financed by Chase as part of this deal as well. That's the part I don't really fully understand. Long story short, from what I can see, is it seems that that's debt that they are taking on as part of this deal. This makes no sense to me. I don't understand why that is a thing. If someone wants to explain it in the comments, I would love that. That would be very helpful. But long story short, it means they're going to be $20 billion in debt after this deal. Again, it makes no sense. I'm assuming this just means that Andrew Wilson, who is still the current CEO of EA, is about to have a huge payday, and he's probably about to F off too. But we'll see. But that debt is the concerning part. That's the most concerning part about this. I'm not as worried about them censoring or altering what games they're allowed to make and stuff like that. I'm worried that now they owe $20 billion as part of this deal, and I don't know how long they have to pay that. I don't know if there's stipulations, like if their performance is good enough, if their sales performances are good enough that they don't have to. Maybe the fund pays it, but I don't know. I don't know how these things work. Just to be totally, out there with my ignorance on this. But that's the concerning part. That's the part I've seen most people saying, like, most reasonable takes on this have been, this probably won't really change much. You're probably still going to get your Mass Effect 5. You're still going to get your next Star Wars game. I mean, we're definitely getting new Maddens and FIFAs and sports games and, some of the big live service things and all that. But in general, things probably won't change much, at least in the short midterm. The scary part is that hanging debt now, that $20 billion, and how do they streamline the company to make the investors happy, make the private owners happy, as they chip away at that debt over the coming years, right? Um, I assume part of this is just that whole corporate thing of just always having debt. These corporations are always taking out, and this is like a rich people thing too, is just always taking out loans and living off of loans. And when you pay off one, you take out another, or you pay off one with another. Like, it's, again, beyond me to a point, but I don't think that it's that loan probably isn't as scary as it sounds, but it probably means more layoffs, probably means more restrictions on projects. It probably isn't going to be all, happiness and green grass and pretty flowers on the other side of this, right? But that's where, I definitely hit a line of ignorance and things like that. My nature is to be optimistic. My nature is to, try not to worry about things outside of my control. This definitely falls into that. I think some of the takes, I'm seeing right now where people are being like, oh, let's raise money and buy BioWare. Let's help them go indie. You can't look at the AAA indie space right now. Look at the Casey Hudson studio that, never even announced the game before it went away because of lack of investment, and how, in that, like, around the 2020 year, when there were like 30 AAA indie companies, and I bet like 5 of them still exist. Wanting BioWare to go indie is wanting BioWare to shut down. Wanting BioWare or EA to just cancel the next Mass Effect now is wanting BioWare to shut down. Even if in the best case scenario, someone buys out BioWare, or BioWare buys itself out and goes indie, EA's not going to sell them the Mass Effect IP, the Dragon Age IP. They're not going to sell those things to them. So, all those people who work there might as well quit and start a new studio. But they've done that, and it hasn't worked. So if you truly want a new Mass Effect, if you truly want BioWare to continue to exist, if you maybe want them to maybe make another Dragon Age game one day, you kind of got to hope this works out, because they're not going to get bought out. They're not going to get sold. They'll either make the next Mass Effect and it's a huge success and they make more games and that's really cool, or the alternative is probably that they get shuttered, and that freaking blows. And I hope that's not what happens. So I'm not asking you to root for this deal. I'm not asking you to be a fan of what's happening here. I get it, I understand, and I agree with the trepidation around this. But at the same time, if you're like me and you want another Mass Effect, and you want all of those veteran devs who work there and all the newer people there to have a job, and for them to hire again and put out a new game here in 3-4 years, hopefully, it's it's probably only happening one way. So just some food for thought, man. Right before N7 Day, we're about a month away, and it's going to be an interesting month, I think. It's at least going to be an interesting few years. Thank you so much for listening to me badger on about this. Like I said before, if you have any of your own thoughts or knowledge, let me know down in the comments. If you want more updates on this EA buyout, on BioWare, on the next Mass Effect, or gaming news in general, consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the like button so more people see the video, and consider becoming a YouTube member if you want this kind of video just a little bit early, as well as some other perks. You can check out my other content and ways to support what I'm doing down in the description of the video. That is all I have for this one. So until next time.